Okay, well, I'm going to press the go live button. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Gibson, and it's a pleasure to be back with you. I am the CEO of Norm Therapy, Inc., as well as the founder and creator of Norm Therapy. We're today here talking with some amazing people, but especially Amanda Hildreth. I'm going to talk about her in a minute after I talk to you about abuse. Right now, abuse is rampant in the world. And I think people are doing their best to contain themselves in environments sometimes where they're shut in, they're locked in with their abusers, whether they're at work with their abusers all day or they're at home. A lot of the skill sets that we teach at Norm Therapy to our patients and to our Norm therapists is we teach them how to transfer those skills from one place to the other, meaning that the abuse care techniques you learn to deal with narcissists or deal with physical abuse or to discern child abuse in your children, or maybe it happened to you when you were younger, to how to deal with those or how to find memories and start to believe in the things that actually happened instead of the things that you've conditioned yourself to believe that happened. Many of those techniques we teach, and we try to give people what we call at Norm Therapy and at ARO Abuse Refuge Org, we call it a hand up instead of a handout. We try to teach you how to operate abuse instead of pretty much, trying to advise you through it. And I think that once you teach a person to fish, they can fish. And that's our exact focus. So we look forward to talking more about that in our subsequent sessions. And we'll start having some panels with some amazing people on it. And hopefully the person we're bringing in right now with us, she'll be on one of our panels in the future. Her name is Amanda Hildreth. She's the editorial manager at Abuse Refuge Org. She actually runs articles for the organization in our blog and for published on Medium and other platforms. She's busy. I'm going to let her tell you because she does so much for the organization insofar as the breadth and scope of how she impacts the issues of abuse and the containment of abuse and to target abusive circumstances as well as dealing with children. I'll tell you more about her. Well, I'll let her tell you. So without further ado, Amanda Hildreth. Hi, Amanda. How are you? Good to see you today.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So, I wanted to break the ice and you tell the world what a typical, because I need to tell everybody, this lady does so much in 20 minutes than most people do all day. I watch her go in from Asana to Slack to the blog to the social medias, and she comments on everything. We have like 30 or 40 or 50 channels in our Slack, and she makes a comment in every last one of them or post something every single day. It blows my mind, and it's always good stuff. So, Amanda, please tell us about you and talk us through your typical day at ARO, Abuse Refuge Org.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I went to Ohio University. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. After I graduated, I kind of went after a lot of like lab technician type of roles or like microbiology, different things like that. And then about, I think it was the tail end of 2022. I decided to stop doing science and kind of take my risk at, writing remotely. Actually, what started writing for me was I saw this course on TikTok, and it was about just freelancing and like how to successfully freelance, and kind of goes over like the different niches you could get into with freelancing, like how to do your taxes, how to be successful as a freelancer, that sort of thing. So that's basically what got me into writing. And while I was still working that last full-time job before I left there, I was, writing on the side and starting all that up. And then I made the choice to, go full time with freelance writing. And I did that up until a couple months ago, just because I got laid off from the position that I was in. So I ended up getting a different position that's not writing, but I still do writing for ARO, obviously.
Mhm.
And I still do plan to do some writing in the future, but freelancing is very difficult to do as like your sole income, because it can be very volatile and a little bit
Cyclical.
non-reliable sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah.
So for ARO, I mean, what don't I do? I don't know.
Talk
So
us
in a
through Slack.
typical
How do you do Slack?
day,
Tell me about
you
Slack.
know, so the way that I do Slack a lot of times is like the night before, I'll like go and like find all my images or whatever and go put them in there. And then like when I wake up in the morning or whatever, I'll just be like post, 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 post. And that's normally how it happens most
But
of the
people
time.
don't know what Slack is. It's a communications platform, something like WhatsApp, but it's more communicable and as well as it's easier to keep in track of everybody in their communications. And you can create groups. We have like the pet menagerie. We have like for people with kids and whatever else. Name some of the departments, not department. What do you call those channels that we have in Slack?
Channels. There's a dose of humor, there's Plant Posse, which is all about plants, there's all things food, book club, or yeah, book club. I mean, there's a bunch.
A
Game
lot.
room, there's relaxation hobbies.
Pets, right?
So there's a bunch.
Yeah, we have all of them. And she posted every last one of them every single day. And something very interesting, mind you. Where do you get such an eclectic array of information to work out of your brain housing group to put it down somewhere and post it? How do you come up with your ideas?
Pinterest.
Oh, Pinterest. Okay.
Always Pinterest. Always Pinterest. Yeah.
I idea how to use that site. I've gone to it and look at all the pins and I'm like, what the heck am I looking at? I still don't
Yeah,
know.
everything I post comes from Pinterest, like always.
I'm glad to hear that. So that gives me a wide array of stuff. Okay, well, great. I'm glad to hear. And so tell me, you're married and you have some kids. Why don't you tell us about your three kids and your husband, if you wouldn't mind?
So, for me, I second marriage. So for both of us, he was married to his ex-wife. Um, they've been divorced a very long time. Ever since their son was like just born. So, I mean, they've been divorced for 13, 14 years.
Okay.
It's been a while. And then for me, when we met, I actually was still in the process of getting divorced. Like it wasn't final or anything yet. But so we met right at the beginning of the pandemic. It was about February 2020. Yep. It was February 2020.
Remember
And
it well.
yeah, right at the beginning of all that. And I had decided to take some of my tax money that I was getting and go get a tattoo because I probably haven't gotten a tattoo in 2 or 3 years just because things
You
were
love
really
tattoos.
hectic.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there next.
Yeah.
Unless
So
you want
things
to do
were
that
getting
now.
really
Knock yourself
hectic.
out.
So I was like, oh, I haven't gotten a tattoo in 2, 3 years. So sure, why not? So I went into a shop and I booked one. And I just basically researched shops and found one that was highly recommended. And I went and I had looked at his Instagram before to kind of look at his work because I wanted something that was watercolor, which is
Mhm.
something that he specializes in. So when I went and booked it, he was not there. Someone else booked it for me, someone else that worked at the shop at the time. And then obviously the day of, he was there and we met and we kind of hit it off. And then it was just that ever since then. And now it's
Immediate
been
connection and chemistry.
4 years. It's been 4 years.
Yay. Well, you know what? Happiness is only having something to look forward to. And I guess if you find someone that's in the path of where you're going and who you are, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. Well,
Mhm.
I'm happy for you. I really am. But I want to hear more about the tat. So what tattoo did you decide to get? So you have three kids
I
now, right?
got,
You and Kenny
huh?
have three kids together. You have three
We
children.
have we have one child together biologically. So
Okay.
he has his son Carter and
Mhm.
he's 14.
Okay.
And that was from his ex-wife.
Mhm.
And then I have my son Cillian, who is 5, and that's from my previous marriage.
Got it.
And
Got
then
it. Blended
Declan is
family.
ours together.
Such a blended family. That's amazing.
Yep.
That's good. I really like that. Okay, well, good. So tell us, what tattoo did you decide to get? I mean, come on. Kenny showed up and finally he got
Yes,
there.
I
What is
can.
it?
I got a sugar skull. I don't know if you can see it. You see how colorful it
Yeah,
is? And
see how, wow. Wow. I'm loving it. Wow. Very few people can do
yeah,
tattoos well. That looks very nice.
yep,
Wow. Great
yep.
work. How much
So
did it
that's
cost
what I
you?
ended
Three
up
thousand
getting.
dollars or something? How much did it cost?
Like it was like 250
250. That's
maybe.
pretty good. That
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have any tattoos, so I have no idea. But that looks like
Yeah,
a bar.
they prices always depend on like design, size, placement, usually. Like
Wow.
if it's a harder place to tattoo, if it's a bigger tattoo, if it's more challenging, that's usually what affects price. And everybody's different. Every shop it has different, like some places have minimums where they charge you the minimum rate per hour, or some people just go off of like, okay, I think that's worth this much sort of thing. So everybody
Now
does
you're
it
married to
differently.
him, you can just,
Yeah,
hey,
I don't pay anything anymore. So
there you go. Yeah, wow, I can say something, but I'm gonna leave it alone because I love it. Okay, well, how about this? I want to get down to a little business here and talk about, the issues. I know addiction is something that's very important to you, and it's prevention. And I'm very proud of you that that's one of the mantles that you've taken up in your life. Tell me something. You mentioned in our narrative that social media glorifies it. How so?
well, so especially with teens, social media really encourages drug use a lot of times. It almost normalizes it between like celebrities or just like other kids their age, normalizing like especially marijuana these days,
Hmm.
like normalizing drug use, and it's just a normal part of life, on social media, and it's not abnormal to see. So it almost normalizes it and makes it to the point where it seems like it's not that big of a deal, especially for teens or like young adolescents. It's especially an issue
While these
with
young
that.
kids have not yet had exposure to real life at such a young age,
Hmm.
then even the effects of the drugs on them, they're normalizing the effects so they can
Yeah,
continue that path.
that's another part of it, is that the reason that social media is so pivotal for them in their age group is that their brain has not fully developed, because most like teens and young adults, your brain isn't typically developed until the age of 21 at least. So
Mhm.
your reasoning and your like thinking skills are not where they are when you're an adult. So it's way easier for them to be influenced by, peer pressure and social media and the normalizing of drug use.
Yeah, especially with the opioid epidemic in the United States and the
Mhm.
methamphetamine, and now they've legalized marijuana. For a long
Mhm.
time, they said marijuana was a gateway drug. Then all of a sudden, it's not. I don't think it has ever been a gateway drug. As a matter of fact, I think
No.
it's always been healthier for you than anything else,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to having illnesses that can curtail its pain or its effects on a human body. It's been proven that I think marijuana, THC, or marijuana and ayahuasca have its medicinal purposes. And I think they're still exploring that because once they, make it a global thing, then that's going to knock that out of business other than in the corporate environment. But that's a whole nother conversation. So, how often do you think kids are affected by drugs because they're online with their friends? And what typical scenarios are they finding themselves in order to um, become addicted to drugs?
I think it's very often. I mean, especially the another factor that you have to think about is like parental drug use. It's not necessarily just social media. A lot of the kids that end up becoming, addicted to drugs in one way or another experience either parental drug use or like another family member that they live with or that they're very close to. But I think a lot of it is like on social media, it's a lot of peer pressure and like being in those, situations where you're just hanging out with friends and they want you to try something or like mushrooms or something like that. Like it's a lot of it's peer pressure.
Mhm.
In I would say probably about 90% of the situations it's peer pressure in one way or another.
How is it curtailed? How do we intervene at that peer level and have more of an
A
influence?
lot of it a lot of it I feel like as parents is having those conversations about like peer pressure and the effects that drugs can have on us and really making them aware, being aware of, who they're talking to and what they're viewing on social media, like what they're being influenced by. So a lot of it is like communication and being aware of, the signs that someone may be addicted to drugs, like the different things that they could use as paraphernalia. Like you'd be really surprised of some of the things that can be used as paraphernalia, like pen caps, bottle caps, like things that are normal everyday things that you wouldn't think of can be used as like drug paraphernalia. So a lot of it is like being not only being aware of like what the signs of addiction are, not just the paraphernalia, but like um the different effects that certain drugs can have, but also having those conversations with your kids of being aware of the effects that drugs can have on them and how their peers can influence them.
Well, a lot of kids these days are being diagnosed with
Mhm.
ADHD or AHD. Which one is it now? ADHD or which one is it? Because they change it.
Autism,
Yeah,
ADHD.
they come up with something new almost every year at the DSM. But um, and they're being blanketed with these prescriptions of drugs and of treatments that I don't really think kids need oftentimes. Like some children are just hyperactive. I mean, when I was a little boy, I couldn't sit still to save my life. And no one ever died. I'm a straight A student. I never had a problem in school.
Mhm.
So, but I was the high strung. I was all over the place having a ball. Or sometimes I'd sit and I'd calm myself. Sometimes the teacher have to say, go sit down and relax. But there was no such thing as hyper or hyper oriented or ADHD or whatever they're calling it now. I got to look that one up to make sure I remember it. But there was no such thing. And what do you think changed though? What do you think changed in society for it to become this thing that people need to sedate their children?
I think it's just being more aware of like the effects of like mental illness on our society just as a whole. And a lot of times also that's like part of the reason that even adults, not just children, may like abuse drugs is to like curb the effects of like depression or anxiety or different things like that to like not feel those feelings and feel like if they're using an upper, feel better, or if they're using a downer to, escape the effects of like their mental illness and what that's having on them.
And do you think that the shaping children from a parental point of view, from the parents' point of view, shaping them because they're using drugs and shaping their minds, do you think that that's going to be something that we uh, can get ahead of? I mean, I think parents inside the home, it's hard to see what people do and how they operate within the home. I think I'm losing you on volume here. Yeah,
Sorry.
there you go. No problem. Uh, but um, but do you think there's something that we can do in with parents, the teaching parents how to structure an environment where children are not that susceptible to drugs?
Yeah, I think a lot of it really just has to do with the communication and the feeling of openness between like the parent and the child is a
Mhm.
lot of it. Like for me personally, like I haven't had this conversation with him yet because I don't feel like he's quite at that age, but like with Carter especially, I want to have the conversation of like if you end up in a situation that you don't want to be in, like if you're at a party and somebody's doing something that you're not okay with, that sort of thing. I want you to be able to call me even if it's 3 a.m., no questions asked, that sort of thing. Um, so I think having just the openness and them knowing that they can trust you and go to you without the judgment, without, you know, putting them down for, doing something they maybe shouldn't have, or like being in a situation they maybe shouldn't have been in. I think that's a lot of it, like letting them know that they can really come to you with like anything.
With empathy and respect. I
Hmm.
think children want to be respected more than anything else. They want you to
Hmm.
listen to them and genuinely respond. I think most
Hmm.
people are incapable of doing that, and that hurts children. I'm going to say most, I say about half society can't do it effectively. And that hurts the child along the way, as well as in its present at its present age, when they can't respond to that child in a way where it's healthy and that child feels like they have a voice. I think that's important in that regard. Do you have any, and I'm reading through your bio, but do you have any motivations, if I want to call them? What was your motivation to come to ARO, to Abuse Refuge, or to help abuse care people? Tell me, what was your motivation?
So my initial motivation was mainly getting more writing experience, because writing is one of those things where it's very hard to get hired if you don't have like work to show. So it's a lot of like you need to have like a portfolio, a body of work to show. So that was my initial motivation. But once I kind of learned like more of what like ARO was about, I was like, well, that would be great. Like my mom experienced a lot of abuse when I was a child, so I'm not like a stranger to it. I've probably experienced some abuse myself, maybe not like physical, but mental, emotional, that sort of thing. So, it's something that I understand like on, a different level than someone who hasn't gone through those things. So that's another like kind of facet of it. And I also wanted to like be able to use my writing towards something, not just have it be like, oh, I'm doing marketing for this website and I'm just like making, it's just kind of meaningless, if you know what I mean. So
Absolutely.
I wanted to use my writing for a purpose, other than, something bigger than myself, if that makes sense.
Well, I think you have written some fantastic articles. And for everyone to know that our blog at Abuse Refuge Org, Amanda writes just about everything with her team of people over there, but she's the editor. So you'll see a lot of good stuff on our website and, wherever it's copied. I think Medium is another platform. So that's pretty
Mhm.
good. I like that. I'm going to keep going with my questions because it's
Okay.
easy to run out of time when you get a good conversation on here. Um, you know, you mentioned in our pre-show when we were talking that some people in your life have, had some abuse occur in their lives and have confessed to you. How are you when you're receiving confessions, or how do you effectively become a part of the solution when a person comes to you and they talk to you about abuse?
I think a lot of it first is just being someone that can listen to, what they've gone through without judgment, without, saying anything, just being there and kind of hearing what, they've gone through. And then, like, for being a part of the solution, saying, like, hey, do you just want me to be here to listen? Do you want to go to the authorities? Do you want to seek some other form of support? Like, try and figure out with them, like,
Mhm.
what you can do to help them along their path, like what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with, and being respectful of what they are or are not comfortable with. Like if they're not okay with going forward to the police, at least, hey, are you willing to seek some sort of support then if you're not willing to go to the police about, whatever
Absolutely.
happened? Just being there on their level and trying to, help them get the support that they need.
Well, fear is the thread to all abuse. It links every abuse in the world. Any fear is the underlying factor. Whatever the abuse is, it doesn't matter. fear will always be involved. And it's a shame. It's a real shame that we teach our society to be cowards pretty much around the world. Don't fight back. Don't hit in school. Don't, we fought in school and people turned out okay.
Right.
And nowadays you can't do any of that. Kids can't defend themselves. So when they get around people pressuring them, they don't know how to fight back. They've not been taught to fight back. They've been taught to be complacent and go along with it. And so, I don't know, we need to fix that some kind of way. What about educating? Education of abuse, about abuse, is probably one of the biggest tools a person can have in their arsenal. What kind of education do you think people need to have when it comes to preventing abuse, especially in the family? I mean, you have 3 children, and I'm sure you're worried about them all the time, being abused by others or anything else like that. So what do you do to sharpen the thinking and performance process of your children to make sure that they're not in those types of circumstances?
So, I think a lot of it is having those conversations that are difficult, but having them at like an age appropriate level. Like, for example, with my 5-year-old, I've had several conversations about like if anyone is touching you in an area that is not, like, obviously he knows his private areas. So I was like, if anyone is touching you in a private area, what do you do? Like, we've gone through these, like, and we refresh pretty often. So we go through them and we refresh them pretty often, like, hey, if somebody is touching you, what do you do? And he's always like, tell mommy, tell daddy, because he knows that's what he's supposed to do. And I make the point to tell him, like, it doesn't have to be a stranger. It could be someone you know, but
Exactly.
you still need to tell us. So I tell him, I make sure that he's aware, like, even if it's someone you don't.
Even
And
if
we've
they
had
tell
the
you not to say
conversation
anything,
of,
you tell mommy, right? Even if they tell
mhm,
you not to, yeah, there you go.
yep,
It's a shame
those
that
sort
there
of
are predators out there
situations.
like that. Yeah, there are many predators out there. I mean, they're coming to light more and more. It seems like the more we move along and numb our society to decency and respect to one another, that the more pervasive and obsequious abuse becomes. It's really interesting. I'm more interested in you said earlier, and I hope I don't want to get too personal or anything unless you would like to, but you said earlier that in your life you've had to experience some level of abuse. And my mom was abused. So I know it as I was abused. And so you said you were abused, but mentally, more mental, I think you said, than anything else. How so? How did that happen in your life?
Especially in my previous marriage, like a lot of stonewalling. There was a lot of things like that, like stonewalling, or like not acknowledging when I would bring up certain issues, or it would get acknowledged, get changed for 2 seconds, and then go right back to, the issue that it was. So a lot of like that sort of situation, kind of emotional abuse, like not recognizing like my feelings and just kind of pushing them aside, and a lot of those sorts of things. And I don't necessarily feel like it was a narcissistic situation. I think it was just a situation of we were complete opposites. So like I'm like, especially one specific way is I'm a very like physical touch sort of person. He was not. He was the complete
Ooh.
opposite. Um, Physical touch wasn't a really big deal. So a lot of that, like with love languages and stuff, it really can go awry if you're opposites and it just doesn't like match up, and that
But those
that sort of thing just
incongruencies will cause many problems throughout the marriage, throughout the
yeah,
relationship. You
it
know,
does. Yeah.
why be with someone that you can't please? It doesn't make
Yep.
any sense. But to
Hmm.
them, they'll go right into the next relationship and they will be just as happy as a lark, not having anything to do with their significant other than every now
Yeah.
and then having a little sex. Hey, that's pretty bad. But that's what
Hmm.
some people live for in their relationship. But it's good that you're a touchy-feely person because it normally means that you're in touch with yourself when you are. So that's a good thing. Most people who are normally not that in tune with themselves. But
And one
anyway,
thing I love about that is like my 5-year-old. I've always been very affectionate with him since he was a baby, and he has grown to be very affectionate with people. And that's one thing I love that he's kind of like picked up on, is being very affectionate with people that he cares about.
absolutely. I think you need to, it's like osmosis. They absorb who you are. And children, especially at that age, 5 years old, 4, 3, during those formative years, they pick up everything. They pick up when my oldest daughter was that age, she would see a baby, no matter where it was, and walk over to it and try to pick it up and kiss it and hi, hello. And she was the most amazing kid when it came to kids. Truly, truly, truly. But I understand that. And I love watching kids who can, demonstrate their affection without it being too much,
Mhm.
and so it's pretty good because that's dangerous too if it's too much. So you got to watch that. So what are your favorite books that you read? What types of books do you read?
I definitely read like thrillers a lot, or like fantasy type books. Sometimes fantasy romance, not usually so much on the romance, but sometimes they can be good. It depends on the book, but usually thrillers are like my go-to, but not that I'm not open to reading other things. It just kind of, if something strikes my eye here and there, I'll read something different, but that's usually what I'm reading.
What about when you're watching movies and television series and dramas? I understand true crime is something that you like a lot. Tell us
Yep.
about it. Tell me a good true crime story. Do you have any available?
Oh, I've got too many. I I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, like Crime Junkies, one of them. They've been around for 6 years, 7 years. I've been listening to that like since it was new. My Favorite Murder, like there's a whole bunch of true crime podcasts that you can get on like Spotify and things like that. But one in particular that I can think of, and I think about this one all the time
Okay.
because it's the most crazy story I've ever heard still out of all the true crime stories that I've heard. And
Now I do want to hear it.
this is about a woman that lived, and it's still the craziest story. But not to get too much into detail, but basically, it was the 60s or 70s. She was hitchhiking, got picked up by a man, and he raped her, and he cut off her arms at the elbow. Yeah, I know. And he essentially threw her over a side of a cliff and left her for dead. And she climbed up the mountain, climbed up the cliff,
With her,
and went.
her fractured limb. Oh no, her severed
No,
limb.
it's gone. It's gone. It's from the elbow down. It's gone with both arms. So she essentially climbed up this cliff and got to the nearest house, and she made it.
Wow. That's
Yeah, I can't, oh man, I'm trying to remember her name.
we have plenty of time. We have plenty of time. Okay,
I'm trying to remember her name. It's beyond me right now, but
because I'm gonna look this
that
one up
one
later on.
I think about that one all the time for some reason.
Well, it's gruesome and it's unthinkable, but also
It's gruesome, but it's
unimaginable.
also, yeah,
Unimaginable that you would just cut the
yeah,
arms off for what apparent I guess for the fingerprints he was doing. But what
yes. Yeah, that was why.
wow, that's pretty bad. That's pretty
Yep.
bad. I okay. Yep, that was gruesome. I guess
Yeah, sorry.
situation. Well, it's okay. I can take it. I'm thinking about our audience, but that's fine. We're adults here having a conversation. But people do things like hitchhike with the idea that there's something innocent to do, and I think that self-awareness is
Oh,
very
she was
important.
15, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Immaturity
Sorry.
will do it every time. At 15, I've never met a mature, at least I've met mature 15-year-olds in my life, but not to the point where you should be hitchhiking across country or town or anything else.
hmm
That I've not met. That's a different kind of maturity. and situation as well as self-awareness are both very critical thinking processes that a person should have before they do something.
Yeah, it was sorry, it was 1970 or it's 1978, and her name was Mary Vincent.
I think I've heard of that story, but not, I don't remember the
Hmm.
arms. The arms I don't remember. Wow.
Yep.
Brunette lady, right? Was she a brunette?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can see it in my head. Well, that's interesting. That's very interesting. And it's a shame because a lot of people find themselves maybe not in those circumstances, but in very dangerous circumstances when it comes to abuse. They end up somewhere, and if you ever find yourself asking yourself, how did I get here? You made a big mistake somewhere. If you ever find yourself saying that you made the mistake, someone else didn't make the mistake, you did. And people don't like taking responsibility for that. What do you think about that when people refuse to take responsibility for the mistakes they make?
Well, I mean, I think it can kind of be like a sort of denial, but like I don't think like her in particular, I don't think that she doesn't necessarily, you know, recognize that she didn't put herself in the best of circumstances.
Mhm.
But I also think that even if you don't put yourself in the best of circumstances, that doesn't like negate what happened to you, sort of
Of
thing
course not.
is my kind of deal. And it's like, how would you know also? Like, it could be anyone that you get picked up by. Like, yeah, it's not the best decision, but I do
But
think.
I think that's parental as well. I think parents have a role to play with their children. And I think
Mhm.
as a parent, I would tell my children never get in the car with somebody you don't know.
Right,
You-
which I've told my 5-year-old so many times. Like,
exactly.
we've
At
had
five,
that
that's
conversation
the
also.
important part right there. At 5 years old, you say that, not at 15. You say that at four
Yeah,
and
we've
five.
had that conversation also of like if somebody comes by and tries to get you in their car and says they have puppies or kittens or candy or what do you do? And he's like, go get mommy because he
Exactly.
knows that's what he's supposed
You
to
don't
do.
want a child saying, well, what if they have ice cream? Then you know you got a problem. So
Yep.
yeah, because they're trying to figure out a way to keep going. And I think it's for parents. I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that parents play a big role in how their teens or their children, especially toddlers, up to 5, 6, 7 years, those formative years, how they respond to circumstance. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
very important that they have that capability. And I'm
Yep.
glad you mentioned that at 5 years old, you said, don't go up to the car. Don't get in the car.
We've probably had been having that conversation since he was 3 or 4.
Okay.
So like he knows those sorts of things. And then we've also had conversations about like what to do if there's a fire in the house, what to do if someone's breaking in the house, like those sorts of things also. So I
Well,
mean, just so he's like aware of what he should do
well, teaching
and all of
situational
that.
awareness is very important. I think one of the major
Hmm.
tenets is that the information that you're teaching come from somebody that's trusted or knowledgeable about it. Kids will respond, especially if their mother and father say, well, this is how it is because this is what happened. Let me educate you.
Hmm.
This is what could possibly happen without making them feel afraid. I think
Yeah,
when
I try to not make him feel afraid. He does feel afraid sometimes if we're like we've talked about obviously people breaking in the house before, and sometimes he will feel afraid like he'll just randomly bring it up. He's like, what if someone breaks in the house or something? And I was like, well, you know what to do. You know, like you know what to do. And mommy and daddy wouldn't let anything happen to you, but you know what to do if it does happen. So that sort of thing of like it's likely not going to happen, but if it does happen, you know what to do. So I
also,
try to, frame it in that way so he's not so much afraid.
yes. And I think that's a great way because you're also teaching him how to rely on himself.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, people say, freeze or flight or fight and they freeze because they don't know what to do. And they don't have these kind of conversations with someone responsible who understand those outcomes. And I think it's very important. I tell people in our norm therapy sessions all the time that, you get to decide if you're going to react to something or if you're going to respond. And normally a response is a well thought out and understood process and not that knee-jerk reaction that you would have that you end up making the mistakes of your life. Because sometimes your life depends on it.
Hmm.
Anyway, I love this conversation. Kids are the most interesting people. They're just little bitty people shaping their minds, and they're smart. Children are smarter than we ever give them credit for. And sometimes when a child responds in a slow intellectual manner is normally because the parents are slow in their intellectual capability. I know that sounds terrible, but I've seen it all over the world. If people are not that quick-witted, their children end up not being that quick-witted. It's just that simple. So what adults need to do before they start telling kids what to do is learn about what they should be telling their children.
Hmm.
Find that education and then try to apply it the best they can. Not everyone's going to be a genius. That's not what I'm saying, but at least to be situationally and self-aware. That's something I think every parent should have an idea of, so they don't end up going down the same paths that some people in their family or their peers or their friends go down, which may not be good. Like drug abuse.
Hmm.
I think peer pressure, and so I'm pretty sure you said it earlier, that peer pressure is probably one of the biggest reasons why people do drugs. I'd say a very large percentage. What percentage would you say that would be? Why kids end up on
For
drugs?
teens or adolescents, 95.
Wow.
Like probably as an adult, I don't feel like it's as much, obviously, because there's just so many other factors. When you're an adult, it could be due to like having a mental illness that you're trying to escape, or like you
Injury.
just try it once and you end up getting addicted. That, I mean, there's so many other factors, but I think for like teens and adolescents, it's a lot.
If you had your druthers or you had your pick of anything you wanted to do in life, what would that be?
Mm, that's a good question. Probably work with animals, though.
Really? You just
Yeah,
from biology to writing to
I
people,
know.
now back to animals. You're just gonna go full circle on me. Okay, that's good.
Hmm.
Oh, you
If
got
money were not an object, yes.
okay. So why animals and what kind of animals and where?
Well, I used to, okay, fun fact. So before I did biology in school, I was doing marine biology for a while. Um,
Wow.
and I got out of the marine biology track because I basically realized that one, oftentimes you need a PhD. So there's a lot of schooling in there. And two, some of the math, like it was a little bit nuts.
Hmm.
So basically I switched to biology, but so I did marine biology for quite some time. So I mean, I know a lot about like marine life and things like that. So I mean, that's probably something I would head towards, but I mean, zookeeping in general, probably. Oh.
I hear,
If money were not an object.
here's what I think. I think as we get older is when we should, even though our society is structured around high school, then college. But I think as we
Hmm.
get older and more mature, we kind of then figure out what we really want to do. But by that time, we're already doing something else. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of people fall into that quagmire. I really think that right after high school, every child should take an overseas trip around the world and to see the world at the expense of the government or the family government dynamic or whatever, but get them out, and like most countries do, get them out into the world so they can see the world. So when they come back home, they'll have a better idea of what it is that they want to do with their lives. I think by just saying,
Hmm.
okay, my dad was an attorney, I'm going to go to law school, I'm going to be an attorney. I think that works, but that's not always the best solution. I do
Yeah,
believe.
and I think with my children, I'm going to try and encourage them to figure out what they want to do, and that college isn't the end all be all. Because honestly, if I was maybe raised different and, was taught that I didn't have to go to college and I had other options, I might not have. But I
Mhm.
mean, who's to say at this point? But I want them to know that there are other options, that college isn't the only option after high school. You can go to trade school, you can, explore the world for a little bit. You can do whatever
I
you
joined
want
the
to do.
military. I joined the military, and I went to
Yeah,
night school
they can
my
do
entire
whatever they want
career.
to do. It doesn't have to be college all the time. So,
Exactly. Okay, so that I like that. I like that, because I think that when you force a person to make a decision on a career at 17 years old,
mhm,
they can't get a beer yet, but they can decide what they're going to do for the rest of their lives.
exactly.
That just doesn't set well with me at all.
Oh,
Or
I know so many people that I went to college with that they went to college for a certain thing and they don't do anything with it. They do nothing with it, nothing even close.
Well, our executive director, Kelly, global executive director, she was telling me one day in a meeting, she said that 95% of the people in the world she had found hate what they do for a living. And I think it's the system of education that we have that's causing that to be the case. I think that's an educational form of educational abuse because kids have to think about so many things, even just finishing puberty, going into their formative, well, their young adult years, and relationships they're probably having. But now on top of all of that, they're moving away to college, which is a high stress anxiety, or they're going to
Mhm.
school in a different environment where it's no longer get in your seat and sit down. It's more like, well, if you come, you come. If you don't, you don't.
Mhm.
And that's how it is in college. But and then they have to make the career choice for their life is unless they've been so focused growing up. You have some kids that, they were in science, they
Mhm.
loved it. And they went to the science fair. And then after that, they went to, clubs and different kinds of other associations they joined about science. So by the time, they're in college, they're looking at, that fast track or the science degree and whatever that may be. Then most people don't have that. Most people go, okay, I graduated, what do I do next?
Mhm.
I think that is a big problem in our society. And in other countries, and I've been all over the world many times, but in other countries, they focus on whatever you think you want to do from like early on, and they track you that way throughout the entirety of your life. I know that like when I was living in Switzerland, when people went to school, their undergrad as well as their high school, everything was oriented toward what they wanted to do. And they got jobs in that sector. And they would help the government, the state, or the canton. They actually work with people to do that. So it was pretty interesting. And people seem to stay at their jobs and be happy and very content the rest of their lives by doing that. I have some questions from the audience for you.
No
Okay.
problem.
Okay. What would you say has been the most valuable lesson as it relates to abuse and how to help others who find themselves in that uncharted territory of abuse?
Um, I guess probably realizing that everyone experiences abuse differently. That like if regardless of the type of abuse, like if one person was sexually abused and another person is sexually abused, they're not going to handle it the same way. They're not going to feel the same way about it. And, realizing that everybody's reaction can be different kind of, opens you up to just being ready to listen because you don't know what their reaction is going to be. And you don't know how proactive they want to deal with the situation, or maybe they want to hide from the situation. Like you don't know how they're going to react. So going in with an open mind and just trying to listen and be, proactive in whatever they want to do about the situation. I think that is something that like I've realized over time is that nobody experiences, even though abuse is so widespread, nobody experiences anyone abuse the same way.
No, they don't. I think the unifying factor, like I said, is fear, but the underlying theme is always pain. I think that
Mm-hmm.
pain is pain. That is pain. But some people have high tolerance. Some people can cope with it. Some people can't. That's why it's important to get in there and figure that out, early on as best you can in the person who's actually experiencing abuse.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's kind of like kind of one thing even just between like me and my siblings. Like seeing my mom abused when we were younger, we all handled it differently. Know one of the three of us handled it the same. Like, honestly, one of my brothers kind of likes to deny, deny, deny. I see it as what it is and I grow from it. And my other brother is more like he's very much more emotionally affected by it and has been for quite a long time. So, I mean, just seeing the different reactions between the three of us, like, there's no way that I can sit here and say, like, okay, Lady A out there and Lady B out there are going to react the same because there's no way.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you're absolutely correct. Is people don't know that it's your specific environment that shapes you, not the the group environment or even your siblings or your mother or father. It's your specific and that's to you and germane to you, to your environment that's most effective on you when you have your developed your different personalities as you grow. And so yeah, I mean, you made a very fine point. I have a couple more questions for you because these are fun. I like doing these. As it relates to child abuse, what would you say or advise parents to pay attention to?
Pay attention to the adults that are around your children, what their behaviors are. Um, like one thing in particular that I tell my 5-year-old is that no adult, whether they're a stranger or someone you know, should ever ask you for help. No adult should ever be asking you for help with anything. Like I've, specified, like if
That's a
mommy or
lure.
daddy
That's
asks
a
you,
lure.
yeah, I was like, if mommy or daddy asks you to go get a diaper or something, that's different. But like no adult that you know or otherwise should be, asking you for help. Like, and bringing up those sort of situations to your kids, like the situations that they could go through and making them aware of those situations, I think is one of the most important things. Just like having that communication, having them know what can happen in those situations is like
Absolutely.
one of the most important things. But definitely you have to try and make it like age appropriate so that your child can do their best to understand at the age that they're at. Because obviously the conversation that you would have with a 14-year-old and a 2-year-old is not the same conversation. So,
Not at all. I think that you hit it right on age appropriate. I think if you talk to what I and I'm kind of with that too, but I have a different philosophy a little bit. I talk to my kids when they were in the womb. I mean literally in the womb. I talk to them just like I'm talking to you. I would talk to the belly and say, hey, what's going on and how are you today? And I do it in like a couple different languages. So they would hear it and get accustomed to it and then play music and all of that. And by the time, and I don't think I've ever said in my life, goo goo gaga. I don't think I've ever said goo goo gaga, baby. I mean, hey, how are you? Yes, of course, you have fun with your child. But I've had serious conversations with my children since birth. And it
mm-hmm,
seemed to make them much more mature, not quicker, but in a different way, to where they
mm-hmm,
actually listen and apply and their level of intellect just kind of shot through the roof, so to speak. And you look at them and go, wow, this kid knows more than me about that now. How is that possible? You know,
mm-hmm.
exactly. But different parenting strategies for your children. That's all I'm trying to relate here. But
Oh yeah, there's so many different parenting styles too. Some people are more lax, some people do the authoritative, and some people do the gentle parenting. I mean, none of it's necessarily wrong. It's just that everybody has a different way of going
yes.
about raising their children, and that's totally normal. And obviously, that's also going to be based off of how you were raised and, what your parents did and what you think is right for your kids morally.
Oh yeah. So what other hobbies do you have? I want to find out before I get off because I'm always interested in things you say. And when you're in our group meetings in ARO and at Norm Therapy, when you're in the meetings, sometimes when you open your mouth to speak, I always sit back and go like this. I'm waiting to hear what you say next. So what's the catalyst? What's your motivation for the things that you know right now?
I think I've always like since I've been a child, and this is something that I do with my kids too. My mom, when I was young, she always like we went to the library every week. We got new books every week. So she encouraged learning from a very young age and like, reading about different things. And I tried to do the same thing with my kids. And honestly, my 5-year-old loves going to the library and loves getting new books for the week. And getting to read about new things. He loves sitting there and having me read to him. So I think a lot of my thing and like a lot of like especially in my like career life, I would almost call myself like a jack of all trades. Like I've done a lot of things, and that's because like I don't think that you should be limited to knowing one thing. Like I think that you can know a lot of things and be a master at know things and be pretty good at one thing, but
I'm pretty good at
also
a
know a
few
lot about
things.
other things.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we live by cliche sometimes in our society.
Hmm.
People say, well, the jack of all trade, master of none. Why can't you be the master of two or three? I mean, why not?
You could be.
Uh, exactly. And at the same time, why, be a jack of all trade? You can really focus on one thing and be happy at it, but still have the capacity to learn other things. I think when people become reticent to learning is when the problems in their lives start. When you think you know enough or everything, that's when you always seem to have a problem. So,
And that's my thing is like, why do you have to be happy just knowing one thing? Why can't you know 10 things and be happy about knowing those 10 things?
when I remember when I was in Special Forces some years ago, and I was also a U.S. Army Ranger. I was scuba qualified, and I was on my way to I left Special Forces to go become an officer. And somebody asked me, why can't you just do one thing and that's it? I said, really? I can't become an officer. And then as soon as I became an officer, I went to flight school to become a pilot. Then I went back to Special
Hmm.
Forces. So I can go on and on and on about that, but I'm just saying that I like the way you think, and I think that more people should. I think the more information you have, the more studies you have, the more training you have, the better you are, the better off you are. And I do agree with
And
that.
that's the thing is, how do you know you're going to like something unless you do it too?
Exact. Okay,
So,
now
and
you got
like, and that kind of brings it back to like the whole picking a career when you're really young. You don't know if you're going to like it because you're not doing it.
well, I love this
So that's
conversation.
why,
Right, you
a
got to be
lot
on
of,
the next panel. You really do. You
yeah,
have to because we're
that's
running
why a
out of
lot of
time.
young people don't end up doing what they major in because they do it and then they find out that they don't like it. And
Absolutely.
how are you going to know you like something else if you don't try that first?
That is
So
very
that's why I'm kind of like jack of all trades, master of none, because like maybe I don't like that, but I
and
don't know. I need to try
exposure.
first.
Exposure. You must have exposure
Mm-hmm.
to things, and you must have it on a level other than cursory. You have to have it on a
Mm-hmm.
level other than cursory. I like that. Listen, I got to read a couple things and give me 1 second. If you've enjoyed and got something out of today's session, I really enjoyed it with Amanda Hildreth. I really did. Please show your support by sharing this video, subscribing to our channels, and liking it. Of course, writing something down. Make a comment. Please go to GoARO, GOARO.org, and normtherapy.com and explore opportunities there and seek help for yourself or for someone needing our services. If you're interested in applying to participate in our live sessions as a guest, victim, or survivor, email us at contact@normtherapy.com. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday, June 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I will be interviewing again Tori Steep. She's an amazing lady. I really like speaking with her, and we're going to continue our discussions on depression, suicide prevention, and other events in the news, as well as abuse and other things. But I really enjoyed Amanda. You were a breath of fresh air. I like talking to people who know what they're talking about and then do it. I hate when people talk about something, but they haven't done it themselves.
Yep.
They try to tell you what but they have no experience in it themselves. But listen, um, I'm going to have panels coming up in end of June and July, and I'm going to have Kelly reach out to you to see if you can come on one of our panels because you offer a very different perspective than a lot of people, and it's very comprehensive, and I like it. And I really enjoyed you here today. Thank you all for watching us. Do you have anything you want to close us out with, Amanda?
Nope, I got nothing. Thank you for
Well,
having me.
well, you're very welcome. I really enjoyed it, and I'll have Kelly in contact with you because I'm loving